Welcome to this version of Volunteer Corner. I have an old friend here, someone that I've known for 5 years or so. But this is Allison DeBlaire. Allison is the co-founder of 519 Pursuit, who the food bank has developed such an interesting partnership with you, Allison, in the organization. And before we get into all of that, why don't you talk to us a bit about what 519 Pursuit? We've been in other venues, you and I together, talking about this, but
Mm.
this is your first time on Volunteer Corner. So there'll be some volunteers at the food bank will just be finding out about this and with you. So why don't you give us a bit of a history?
So, 500 Pursuit came from an idea of kind of doing better for ourselves in the community through supporting individuals that are facing homelessness and extreme poverty. My background, I've been a security guard in the city for over 10 years and often was faced with being the voice of exclusion or just witnessing individuals facing homelessness, just walking aimlessly downtown late at night. And I just kind of got curious what they did after everybody went home, after the doors closed, what happened as for support and how, they lived their lives. Through that, I started many conversations with individuals. I became a familiar face and I started to do care packages from my own clothing and things that I had. And through that, I realized that many great relationships were forming. For many years, I spent time talking with individuals that were facing homelessness and tried to learn more about, their story and what they did for getting support and where they stayed at night and things like that. And over that time, I realized that there was a real gap in service. There wasn't enough, shelter beds for people to get inside. There wasn't enough outreach groups that were going out there. And talking to individuals facing homelessness or supporting them where they were at, it was mainly a door that they had to walk through and
Yeah.
a lot of different doors that they had to walk through to get the support they needed. So um, at the time, I encouraged a lot of my friends to come out and do outreach. We started as like a small group of friends that would,
Mhm.
just fill up the car with stuff that we had. We would go out and see these individuals that we built relationships with over time, and then realized that it was something that folks wanted and needed was just, people helping people, people showing up and just having a conversation with them, seeing what they were doing day to day, and just offering what support they could. Um, with that, we learned to like leverage social media when we cleared our closets and didn't have much more to share and knew that there was a need in the community. And this was about 6, 7 years ago. So social media was just becoming a tool that businesses were using. And we were lucky enough that our strategy worked in, becoming a drop off point at our home and using our basement as kind of a mini donation center until we grew from there. So
Yeah.
it really was the thought of a friendship based approach, just friends coming together and seeing what we could do to help the community. And from that, in the last 5 years, we've flourished into this day to day organization that is out there helping folks. We are a service amongst many others that are working in collaboration to help individuals facing homelessness, especially in encampments in our city.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think you go to where the people are at, whereas usually when people think about homeless, they think about people coming into maybe an agency or a shelter or something. But you've always been the type that have gone out there and taken supplies and not just that, but comfort and advice and consolation rides, things like that that people have needed. But you and I and our two organizations, we're going to have this 5 year anniversary thing in May, and it's going to be great. But when I think about the birth of that relationship, Allison, it was 5 years ago. The pandemic had just gotten started. And in one day, we started the homeless lunch program with you folks. It was you and ourselves and RBC Place, if you remember, and we
Mm,
just announced it
yes.
we thought we would see what would happen. You know, it was great because RBC Place wasn't really open during that time, but they kept themselves
Mhm.
open in order to help with this. I think the food bank was just, you know, all sorts of things were happening because it was a pandemic. We were still open. We were just crowded out with volunteers. And I think for you folks, suddenly homelessness began to really emerge as a significant presence in the city at that time because of the
Yeah.
pandemic. Many of the agencies weren't open or were partly open, or their people were at hotels. It was difficult. And it really opened the door, I felt, for this kind of partnership between the food bank and 519 to look at a future together in which, as a food bank, because we're more emergency based, we really like the idea of working with someone like 519 Pursuit and getting the supplies out to where the people were at. And I think for us, I think it's been perfect. I mean, I think what 519 did is they gave us access into a population we hadn't had to that degree before. What's it done for you folks? I'm wondering.
Yeah, I just want to like run off of that and say, um, like at the time of the pandemic and in that one day, um, for us as an organization and for organizations that were serving out their door, very quickly people had to think of like what could be done. Like
Mm,
doors were told to be closed and people were told to stay home. But for individuals facing homelessness, like they didn't have a home, they didn't even have access to information the way that we had access to information or understanding of what was going on. And for that birth of partnership, overnight, it really,
mhm.
really helped us as an organization understand the
Yeah.
need that was there, like going to people, especially in a time of like major crisis, is so important rather than saying, here's 15 doors across the city that you can walk through and get support. Like it really helped me as a community member understand what it's like to walk in somebody's shoes who are facing homelessness, and trying to get support each day. For us, like in 5 years, we could never imagine where we are today.
Mm,
Working with RBC Place and the London Food Bank for the meal program helped us,
yeah.
tackle this ongoing need of food security in the community to people who literally don't have access to food and would have to, walk or get somewhere in a specific timeline
Yeah.
to get food without energy to
Mhm.
make that walk. So that piece alone was extremely important. It helped us understand past being good friends, past being good community members, um, that we could be a solution to a greater need that is part of the crisis of homelessness.
Yeah.
Um, I think as an organization, as you know, when we partnered, we didn't have staff. We were 100% volunteer base. Working through this partnership, we've been able to go from like very grassroots to being, who's at home right now? Do you want to jump in a car and go help out? To okay, Monday to Sunday, we need people that can show up because we have meals to get out there with survival
Yeah.
gear and basic needs. To then saying, okay, we need an outreach coordinator, and had, one staff member, to then having three staff members, to now, looking back 5 years, the amount of meals, the amount of care packages, the amount of connection, the system navigation, which I think is a huge one, is showing up to people, learning about their story, what they have tried to get support, and just being somebody who could say, hey, like, did you try this? I could
Yeah.
call, you know, this shelter or this service or this person and see if they can help you. Um, Rather than just sitting in your encampment and thinking this is all you are and all you deserve. It's not that. It's just that we don't have enough housing. Like we
Yeah.
have to circle back and say, because you don't have a house doesn't mean that everything else revolving around you can't be overcome. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like, as an organization, we show up day to day, not with a plan to solve homelessness, not with a plan to, um, tell an individual facing homelessness, this is what you have to do. We show up every day and have the opportunity to start with a warm meal, which is incredible. And then to get the conversation going and see how we can make their day better and work a little bit more for themselves and the community around them.
Yeah. And Allison, do I have it right? Are you a volunteer as the
I am
director?
a volunteer. I
Yeah.
Yes, I am a volunteer.
Yeah,
I
see,
have
that's a wonderful thing. I was a volunteer director for the food bank for something like 27, 28 years. So I always have that's a special thing for me. So, that it's really awesome that you've given it that kind of leadership. So let me ask you a question. Though there's been so much going on across the country about homelessness. The pandemic obviously unleashed this kind of thing into communities because so many places were closed that would normally help. But the different cities have come up with different ways as to how they would respond to the homeless problem. And it's all across the country. It's not just in London. So the city has set up its health and homeless strategy. It's also
Mhm.
set up things like winter shelter programs and other things. Where does 519 fit within that ecosystem? It's kind of an official response. It's not just about the city, it's about these other agencies as well. How do you fit in all of that?
Yeah, I really like that question because I think this is something that as we move forward with many conversations and collaborative approaches, is that we want to remain at the level of friendship base.
Mm,
We don't want to become a housing support worker. We don't want to become a social worker. We don't want to become, um, somebody who is taking information and tracking folks. We want to stay on that friendship base level so that we can help break
mm,
barriers into getting support. I think we continue to focus on outreach, which is going directly to the individual, going in encampments. Right now, we have we have 3 teams that go out. We have 2 driving routes, Monday to Friday. They go in vehicles. One heads north, one heads south, and then we have a walking route who pulls a wagon in the downtown core and connects with individuals that are found just kind of on the sidewalk, in storefronts,
mm,
at the library, just in places that is really hard to reach by vehicle. And then we added over the last year a biking route. In partnership with the London Bike Cafe, we have a team that goes out once a week and
mm.
kind of hits the bike trails and tries to find those individuals that are really out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And our goal is to like check in on those people, be consistent, have conversations, build trust, build kind of community around them, and say, you know what, it might not have worked for you alone, but let's try to get back in those doors. Let us try to support you through connecting with these services. If there's a communication breakdown, let us try to help you communicate. Can we call somebody right now to support you? Like, I think that's where we fit in best. And the more that we can remain friends helping friends, the more that we can support other services that are trying to support these individuals that may have barriers to their approach.
Yeah.
So I think it's really awesome to see the collaboration that has been going on and where we fit in, because as there are barriers, we're slowly breaking them down, just being friends kind of in the middle of that.
Yeah. What I find fascinating about it, to be honest, it's how should I say it? I think as cities try to respond, the truth of the matter is the cities have not been funded well enough from senior levels of government to be able to work on the housing issues and others. They do what they can. It's not been easy across the country, but because housing the unhoused can be a pretty expensive investment. It's hit and miss sometimes depending on funding arrangements, where things are at, so on and so forth. But the thing about 519 is that you're just always there. What's ever happening around that larger piece and whatever's going on, people can always count on 519. I know many that are involved and actually help to take the food out. They can always count on 519 being there, regardless of what's happening with that larger piece, which is very important. No attempt to minimize that here at all. But the fact that you see them as friends, I mean, it's because friends see one another. It's not just that they support one another, but you do have this contact on an ongoing basis because you wish it and they wish it as
Yeah.
well. And you're doing that every day, despite what's happening in that larger picture. I presume that for your volunteers, that's part of the reason why they signed up. It's because they wanted that kind of contact. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I was when you were done, I was gonna say I owe it all to our, community partners and volunteers and our staff. that show up each and every day. It's funny because Jane and I actually, we laugh sometimes because we're like, my staff won't take a day off. Like they need to take a day off.
Mm-hmm.
Our volunteers are so eager to volunteer that
Yeah.
there's actually not enough volunteer opportunities for them to volunteer because of those relationships. Like
Yeah.
when you're out there doing outreach, it really is connection and community. It really is, looking forward to, seeing the person in the tent. For
Mm.
other people in the community, they see a tent and they might just, think the worst. For us, we see a tent, we think of the person in it, the life that's around the person that's surviving in it, the struggle that they go through, the amount of times they've tried to get help or, put forth the effort. And, it's just every 24 hours.
Mm.
It's like right now the river is getting higher, the snow is melting. People think of encampments along the riverbank and
Yeah.
they think, I hate to see it. But for us, we're
Mm-hmm.
like, there's somebody living in that. If overnight the river rises, by the time they go to bed and wake up, they could be underwater.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because they're unhoused. That's because there isn't enough opportunity for housing. And that's where I find it's important that we're out there every day checking on people, because in 24 hours, many things can happen.
Yeah.
And they're alone most often.
Yeah. Well, I think it fits a really necessary spot. I remember, like, we have three kids from South Sudan, as you know, you've met them,
Yes.
but they
Yes.
were kept alive before we ever met them by airdrops that came in from the United Nations in South Sudan. It was a terrible famine. They'd lost their mother. It had been tough, but it was those airdrops that kept them alive. But there was really no contact. And I think often what can happen with homeless people or unhoused people or people living rough is that if they can get into a place to get help, I mean, that's awesome that is there. But there's also the other extreme where somebody could just come and leave food for them, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever is give them supplies, but there's actually not much in the way of contact. And it seems to me that what 519 is doing is saying, look, at our main thing is actually contact. That's what
Yes.
we're looking for.
Yes.
We bring resources, but it's the contact that we're looking for. I think that's a really needed space in the struggle against homelessness.
Yeah. And like for me, as the founder of 509 Pursuit, like I spent a lot of time not thinking about how can I overcome homelessness?
Yeah.
How can I make something to support homelessness? It was really like, I know 15 individuals that are facing homelessness right now. I know them by name. I know what they're
Mm.
doing. I know where they are. They know where I work. They know where I am. They're going to find me. We're going to have conversation and connection. And that's where it started. Then I realized, oh, well, I could use my front porch and people could start donating clothes and I could take clothes to these folks. And then that was great. Then I realized, oh, I have a cell phone with information on me all the time. I can call somebody for
Yeah.
them standing in front of them. And then the relationship just built further and further. And now looking back, 7 years ago, like we have people out there. We have 8 to 10 people out there in the community every day doing this. Like that's incredible
Yeah.
that people are just showing up and helping people. And that alone and the connection and the friendships being made is just so awesome. Um, just last week, we took 5 friends that live in an encampment to a London Lightning game with us. Like we got to take them out
That's
of
awesome.
their situation. We got to take
Mhm.
them into community and enjoy a social event because we built the trust, we built the relationships, and that's something that they wanted to do with us.
Yeah.
Like that's the reality that we're looking forward to doing, is that when the homeless person becomes housed, we don't want to just drop off and not support them or be a part of their lives because they're not homeless anymore. We want to keep going. We want to, flourish that relationship. We want them to volunteer with us. We want to do social events with them. We want to build relationships so
Yeah.
that we know them at their worst, but we also know them at their best. And
Yeah.
we can be a part of that journey with them and support them no matter
Mm.
what along the way. I
Yeah.
think that's the like looking back, that's the coolest part about 509 Pursuit, is because of a thought that I had. Hundreds of people have come together
Mm.
and like just ran with the thought. They're like, this is awesome. I can do it. And the relationships built along the way are what makes it so great.
Mhm. So plans for the future for 519, where are you at about that? Or do you even think about that? Are you just kind of living winter by winter or season by
Yeah.
season or year by year? What do you do there?
But definitely, there's always plans. There's always like there's dreams. I've been dreaming of doing this mentorship program
Mm.
for years, and we've actually started. We've started just in February doing our first couple of like days where we're going to the movie theaters, we're going to the London Lightning game, we're
Mm.
hosting ID clinic and getting people ID, we're having meals, totally outside of like we're an outreach team coming to an encampment and helping people facing homelessness.
Mhm.
We're now like creating space and people are showing up because they want to show up. And we're working on doing something for them to get better in their situation. So first that's, getting their ID and having ID. Then it's doing paperwork with the support system so that they can be ready for housing and so on. And as we do those, we're working on community events alongside it where we can focus on social inclusion. We can show them the other side of homelessness. Like once you're housed, there's so many beautiful things that we could be doing together. And before you're housed, let's do it because you deserve that with a
Yeah.
house or without a house.
Yeah.
But let's pull you out of the crisis first and foremost and just focus on being you for a few minutes.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're hopefully headed. I was laughing to myself this morning thinking of something that a counselor once said to me, and they said the best thing that we could do as a council is run you out of a job.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, that's great.
Mhm.
But in your mind, my job revolves around helping people in encampments. But in my mind, I never wanted to help people in encampments. I didn't want them to be in encampments. I wanted to focus on helping people once they were housed,
Yeah.
being supported and reintegrated. And so it just popped up in my head this morning, and I was laughing to myself, thinking, like, that's the mindset that we shouldn't have. Um, my job should always be, ever changing because I'm not trying to focus on homelessness. I'm trying to focus on the people in the crisis.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the cool part about 509 Pursuit is that we're not built on like, there's a big homeless crisis in our city. How do we solve homelessness? We're really focused on there's 250 people we know that live, alongside the river, on the sidewalk, here or
Mhm.
there, and we want to support them on this journey in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Like, how do we keep evolving so that we're there beside them or they come beside us and they're helping others? How do
Yeah.
we support them so that they're so stabilized that they can now volunteer and they can host, community events and do outreach and just kind of keep bringing people in?
Yeah.
Um, I think that's a really special part of 509 Pursuit. And I do want to um, kind of shine a light on a couple of our staff who are in recovery from addiction. One is about to celebrate 3 years sober, and one is about to celebrate 4 years sober.
Mhm.
And I think just having them alone on our team and being the presence of, recovery is possible. Let me be the friend that shows up and shows you that, when you're ready, we can do this together. I think
Mhm.
that's so special about 509 Pursuit. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. In May, you and I and our organizations, which are both largely volunteer, will be celebrating together the 5 years of our operating. But Allison, it just feels to me like we've been together forever. I don't. I think it's because
Yeah.
it's such an immersive world. We're involved every day with one another, right?
Mm.
It just is not really a time frame to it to me. It's just there's needs out there. Let's just get involved. We're all 24/7 minded people. We believe in community. We want to be there.
Yes.
But it's been such a great partnership, and Jane and I just last week were putting together the totals. Like the food bank's given almost $500,000 for homeless meals in 2024, but the majority of those went to 519, and I think it's
Yeah.
because we believe so much in what you are doing. I think our volunteers would be delighted by your own volunteer spirit, but also by your organization. But I think it's wonderful what you have done. It's in real time. It's much like food bank helping is in real time. It's not something that's behind a wall or something else, right? It's just the people of need. It's there. You can come. You can see a person. They're there to help you out. So I think it's wonderful that you've established that. But I just can't see it as 5 years. I kind of see it as forever. So we
Yeah.
really appreciate all the work that you folks have done in the city.
Yeah, we really appreciate it as well. And just quickly, I just um through the dreaming process of 509 Pursuit and like thinking like how can I do better for these folks? Like how can I show up? I never thought of having the resource of food. I never really saw food coming to these folks that I was,
Mhm.
seeing. It was really like you got to get through the door and you got to get through the
Yeah.
door before 200 other people get through the door by a certain time at night, or nothing is coming to
Yeah.
you. So
Yeah.
I think it's incredible that together, like this
Yeah.
resource has flourished. And like you're saying, like the amount of meals that are going out every single day
Yeah.
can multiply by the amount of impact, the amount of
Mhm.
conversations, the amount of times that, we met somebody in crisis and we're able to be a friend and just kind of take them out
Yeah.
or call an emergency service. Like it's just incredible to, start with a warm meal and see what can come from there. And I think that's
Yeah.
the best part about our partnership is that
Yeah.
we can count the number of meals and just think like handing off that meal just opens up so much
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Well, that's for you and that's for the people that you're helping. But for us as a food bank, it actually liberates us. We're not
Mm,
stuck. We're not stuck in
yeah.
a greenhouse at the food bank or in the warehouse at the food bank, much as we do with other agencies. We supply them, but those are the ones that are really tackling the poverty situation. It's not so much the food bank. But as we looked at the homeless difficulties, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, it was really 519 that gave us that opportunity to stretch ourselves out into the community more. And we'll always be thankful to you for that and for your organization. So I think we've all empowered one another to just keep moving forward and doing what we can. And I'm looking forward to continuing this partnership as the years go on.
Yeah, so are we. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for doing this, Allison.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.